Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Top 12 Trends in Data and Cloud Storage, which is a joint webinar brought to you by the SNIA Cloud Storage Technology Initiative and SOTA Foundation. This is Michael Hord, your host and moderator for today's discussion. I work for Intel, and I serve as chair for the SNIA Cloud Storage Technology Initiative. Today's conversation is with Larry Lai, who works for FutureWay and represents the SOTA Foundation. Hello, Larry. How are you?
Good, Michael. Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well, thank you. Also joining us today, we have Reddy, who works for Intel and serves on the board for the SOTA Foundation. Hello, Reddy. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Glad to be here.
Great. Before we get started, I want to mention that SNIA is a group of about 180 industry-leading organizations comprising of 2,500 active contributing members and 50,000 participating IT end users and storage experts worldwide. Let's see, I think I skipped. As one of the organizations within SNIA, the CSTI is dedicated to education and promotion of cloud storage technologies like AI at the edge, storage security, as well as driving understanding and collaboration among other industry associations. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at the SNIA legal notice. This provides SNIA's copyright notice regarding use of the material. There are no warranties expressed or implied, so if you want to reference this material, please do so at your own risk. You can download a copy of this presentation using the interface for this live webinar. The interface also allows you to submit questions during the talk and rate this presentation at the conclusion. We really appreciate your questions and feedback. For today's discussion, we will learn about the SOTA Foundation, review key findings in the Data and Storage Trends 2022 report, and host an interactive Q&A session where we encourage you in the audience to get involved. Please submit questions at any time during this presentation. If we are not able to cover all the questions during the session, we will answer your questions in the Q&A blog, which will be posted after this webinar. So let's get started. Larry, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone again. Good morning. I'm Larry Lai. I'm the chair of Outreach Committee at SOTA Foundation. Today, really, it's an honor to be part of this webinar. I'm invited by SNIA to attend. Reddy and I, very happy to talk about the SOTA Foundation, also the recent data storage trend survey we have done. First of all, let me kind of just give a very brief overview of what SOTA Foundation is, and then Reddy can spend most of the time talk about the survey report itself. So SOTA Foundation is a Linux Foundation project. So we started, launched in June 29, 2020. We are a open source project focused on data storage management for data autonomy. So what we're trying to do is provide a neutral, vendor-neutral platform for cross-project collaboration between community and then different organizations, including SNIA and many other related organizations. And our goal is not just to define APIs and spec, but also actually provide a good quality end-to-end solutions that end user, typically large enterprise end users can use, deploy in a data center. So our projects start with a heterogeneous storage control project, and over the years has been involved into additional projects, including multi-cloud data management, storage monitoring, observability, virtual data lake, and container data management as well. And one thing also I want to mention is that because we were trying to provide end-to-end solution, and we know that it's not possible for us to develop everything by ourselves. So we collaborate with many other open source projects. So on the right side of my screen, you can see our landscape. So we have a marketing initiative called Echo Projects where we collaborate with many other related data storage management projects. And next slide. So the other thing we do besides development, we build an ecosystem. We also doing a lot of researches to try to understand where what end users are looking for and where the technology is heading to. So one thing we been starting doing since 2021 is data storage trend survey. So we finished one. We done one last year, and here's you see a kind of illustration of the process how we do this. First of all, we collect questions on the experts and partners, and then so for data and storage trend related questions, and then we in July 2022 we announced it, and we'll work with other partners such as SNIA, CES, CNCF, and many others to announce it. And the survey was conducted in 3 different languages: English, Chinese, and Japanese. And after we collect the survey responses, so we know, like in the what we're trying to focusing on is the answers from the vendors, also large, small, medium, large end users, and for people who are developers or CXOs or data analytics professionals. And so we targeting those those audience people to get response from. So in the end, we receive about close to 400 responses. Once we receive the responses, we do some analysis, and also we do filter out some questions or answers are not not relevant, or obviously some answers seems to come from human and by bots or from machines. And then we do more kind of massage of the data and do more analytics. And in the end, we generate this data, shows the highlights and the top trends. And Linux Foundation Research work with us to generate the final report. So that's the whole process. So next, I'll let Reddy introduce more detail of the report of the trend survey.
All right. Thanks a lot, Larry. So this is Reddy Chagam. I'm from Intel Corporation, Senior Principal Engineer. I'm also the board member in the SODA Foundation. So I'm going to cover a couple of meta themes, just to give you the flavor of the report findings, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So the top 12 trends. So, I mean, as you can suspect, that data growth continues to be the key theme whenever we do the survey. We did the survey back in 21, and then this is the latest survey. But if you look at the, within a year, we see that definitely there is a trend in the data growth, especially from the end user organizations that have 1 petabyte or more. So there is a sizable increase in the data growth, from these companies, these big companies. And then naturally, when you look at the amount of data, the data management solutions that actually sit in the IT environment with the multi-cloud, solutions out there, there is no single solution that you can actually use to do the entire storage and the data management, across the board. So typically, very consistent with the theme of what we have seen before, and as you can suspect that all the end users that we have actually surveyed, majority of them, they essentially prefer multi-vendor solutions, which is something that you have seen come across in the past as well. But this is going to be more and more of a dominant theme, with a mix of open source solutions taking the precedence, especially for the data management. The second set of themes that we came across is there is always a transition point from the private cloud to the public cloud. um, as you have come across in the transition from bare metal to the virtualization on-prem, we see more and more workloads transitioning to the public cloud. You know, Not just one public cloud infrastructure, but multi-vendor, multi-cloud management solutions on top. Um, Cloud software stacks predominantly drive the need to actually do the storage within the on-prem as well as the public cloud data management solutions as well. So that's the second theme that we actually see in the survey. The third theme, which essentially is, it's all about security. So when you have the data that is actually um, deployed in multiple places, some of that may be controlled by the IT organization itself. Some of that is actually in the public cloud. So the security actually takes the center stage, when it comes to the data that is actually being deployed in multiple places. This includes, security for the data in transit as well as data, at rest as well. So it has to be a comprehensive security, and that seems to be the top of the mind for most of the, end user organizations. Um, so the other thing is how do you actually protect the data, especially if you have data, in the multi-cloud, the deployments, the data protection and the security on top of that is essentially going to be is a big challenge. The security solutions will vary based on what cloud provider you have, and essentially having a unified security policies, governance rules on top of that is really the top of the mind for most of the IT organizations. Um, the next theme is really the reason for why some companies choose to deploy certain infrastructure solutions on-prem. One of the key themes that showed up is really the container-based solutions in general. They say that the security is difficult to implement. The reason being, a container is essentially a lightweight compute environment. When you actually deploy that, if there is any vulnerability in the container, or the packages that actually being used for the containers, that trickles into the server that is hosting the containers, runtime environment, and it also trickles into the data center infrastructure. So there is an element of deployability and the complexity that brings onto the table with Kubernetes and how they effectively manage, and how that how to manage the security on top of that is a key concern. Um, and then obviously the multi-cloud security is the second key concern. Those two reasons actually drive the need for hosting certain workloads on-prem. It may be driven by the performance, it could be driven by the security, it could be driven by the control, as well as ability to satisfy the local the governance rules. So there are certain workloads still sit in the private cloud, especially for certain attributes that they are aiming for performance and others that I alluded to. The last but not least, the data quality itself, and the governance of the data and the security on top of that are really the three big priorities that these end user organizations are battling with. Now, how do we essentially solve these problems? So this is where the key theme of there is a need for data protection, as I alluded before. There is a need for the data storage using cloud storage technologies, and then there is a need for disaster recovery, right? So the combination of all those three use cases actually trigger the need for deploying certain workloads on-prem, certain workloads in the multi-cloud environment. And that actually brings the cloud storage monitoring as the greatest challenge. So how do you monitor all the data is actually sitting in multiple places. Now, the surprising aspect of this is more and more companies are looking at AI-based solutions as a way to drive the observability, drive the insights of how the data is being used, consumed, detect any vulnerabilities, be able to react, very quickly, which is expected. But I wasn't, thinking about seeing this type of trend for the core IT operations management more than anything else. We know that AI-driven workloads are dominant, but in general, seems to be, there is a trend of using the AI, related technologies for managing the IT infrastructure and be able to, have a very good sophisticated data management solutions on top of that. So that's kind of the meta theme that we have seen, as the 12th trend. So in a nutshell, there are basically four, meta themes. One is there is a data growth. There is an element of deployability, between on-prem and multi-cloud, solutions, and then the security, the compliance, data privacy. All those things actually take a center stage when it comes to the set of problems that the customers are facing with, and then obviously the need to do the monitoring, be able to actually proactively manage the data are going to be the key focus areas going forward. So that's the top. Those are the top 12 trends. So I will cover the three different charts just to give a flavor of the survey itself. First one is the data growth. So as you can see in the chart, we have, as Larry pointed out, the survey went out to pretty much all the small companies, big companies, and you can actually see the spectrum of where the data growth is. So interesting to see that there is a lot of the data growth is really from the companies that have a capacity of 1 petabyte and above. There is a significant data growth. That's one of the reasons why we see that there is a 3x data growth compared to what we have seen in 21. This is primarily driven by two big dominant workloads. One is really the data analytics. The other one is really the structured data and databases. Those are the two. Now, data analytics is primarily once you collect this data, driving the data analysis part, and having the insights into the data to essentially drive the customer differentiation as opposed to one size fits all, right? So that seems to be driving the data growth, more and more differentiating based on the customer priorities and customizing the services to meet the individual customer needs as opposed to really the broader customer based type of solutions. So that's one trend. So where are the data storage investment areas that we see in the next 3 years or so? Now, as you can imagine, that there are bare metal workloads, there are software-defined storage workloads, right? And then there is an element of set of workloads that are actually being deployed, cloudified and deployed, between private cloud and multi-cloud. So the cloud technologies, taking advantage of those technologies, whether it is optimizing for the performance using on-prem versus using, storing the data in the multi-cloud, let's say for the disaster recovery. So basically cherry pick best of breed solutions to optimize the performance and the cost aspects seems to be the dominant by taking advantage of cloud solutions. The second theme is data management. So once you have all this data sprinkled everywhere, there is a need for data management, cohesive data management. And then the third one is obviously the analytics that actually play a significant role in mining the data, driving the insights, and customizing the services to meet the individual customer needs as opposed to a broad one-size-fits-all approach. So those are the key meta themes. And then the last element is really where do we see the data management trends in the next 2 to 4 years. As I mentioned before, there seems to be a trend towards taking advantage of the AI-based solutions for the data management as well. This is fairly beginning. in terms of where we see the opportunity is, and we probably need to focus more and more in the open source communities, including Soda Foundation, and target AI-based solutions as a way to optimize the data management and drive the efficiencies for the IT operations as well. Right. So that is really the theme going forward. So now I talked about the trends, top trends, and where things are heading from the end user IT organizations perspective. Now, as Larry pointed out, we do these surveys primarily to figure out where should we focus in the open source communities. As you can see that the data management is a key theme, but when you actually dissect the data management into multiple areas, the first thing is how do you manage different multi-vendor solutions that are actually there on the in the on-prem. So you may have a EMC-based solution, Dell EMC-based solution. You may have NetApp-based solution. You may have Ceph open source-based solution. How do you bring all these pieces together through unified control plane, right? That has been the major focus area in the Soda Foundation project. On top of that, data protection and disaster recovery being one of the key areas of concern from the end user organizations. We have a project called Kahu that essentially does the container Kubernetes-based containers. How do you backing them up and then restoring them, and you can back them up in any of the cloud environments that you prefer to use it for. So that has been one of the key focus areas from the Soda Foundation perspective. And then the multi-cloud data management. So let's say you have an object store on-prem, and that object store is, let's say, Swift API based or S3 based. And then you essentially have multiple clouds out there. Not every cloud will use S3 based API. So the goal of this project, Strato project, is to bring in, unify the object control plane using S3 API, and then behind the scenes, it will manage based on the policies on where do you store, where do you move seamlessly among multiple, the cloud providers as well as the on-prem. So that has been the third focus area. The fourth area is really about observability. How do you gain insights into the where the data is stored, how the data is actually consumed, and ensure that you are actually monitoring for any of the vulnerabilities in the environment, be able to proactively address them. So Delphin is the project name that I think we made quite a bit of progress in this in this space, and I strongly recommend you guys to take a look at this. So this is the hetero monitoring solution. So those are the four focus areas. Like I said, there are a few things that we haven't actually focused on. One is the security and the privacy aspects. How do we address them? We are still trying to figure out the best way to do that in the Soda community. And then obviously the last but not least, the most important one is how do we take advantage of the AI-driven the infrastructure solutions, be able to deliver open source data management solutions on top of that. Right? Those are the two focus areas where we do like to spend some time and energy to figure out the best way to kickstart some of the early projects. So with that, let's open up for the panel discussion. Michael, back to you.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you so much for that great information. So we've got a couple of questions here. And so the first question is, the SODA Data and Storage Survey shows data has grown over 3 times in the last 2 years. How does this impact end user decisions on managing cloud storage costs?
Okay, I will take that. So as I pointed out, there is a data growth, explosive data growth. That explosive data growth means, how do you optimize where do you store the data? How do you analyze the data? And how do you actually, use it for long-term retention? Most of these end-user IT organizations, they are essentially looking at the best-of-breed solutions. So, for example, let's say you have databases that are actually used for mission-critical, decision-making. You may have the data stored in the on-prem environment, but you may actually store some of the content, back into multi-cloud, and then you may do the analytics there, and then you can actually do the backup and recovery in the cloud service provider infrastructure. So it essentially tends to be, a set of um, technologies, cloud technologies, and it's going to be a best of breed, on-prem versus multi-cloud, to really optimize the TCO. But at the end of the day, it is all about addressing the customer needs as well, right? So you have to cover both ends of the spectrum.
Awesome. Thank you. And then, do you see private cloud deployments growing well? And if so, what are the top reasons for this growth?
Michael, if I may,
Sure.
like to take that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so definitely, according to the survey report that shows private cloud, it will continue and continue to grow. And the top reasons are, according to our survey takers, security, data, privacy. So the benefit also, we also talk to a lot of large end users. A lot of end users are also our community member. And we know that the learning from them, that we know that the benefit of private cloud is the end user can, organization, because they control the data center themselves. They don't need to concern about the quality security of the tenant applications, unlike in public cloud. So you have to share resources, especially nowadays. Like containers, being widely deployed, and so of course multiple tenants using container services, and on the public cloud they share object operating system image, right? So that will introduce vulnerabilities and exposures introduced by maybe introduced by other tenants application, and which can impact the other tenants. So with the private cloud, you can basically eliminate this problem, this concern.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have a question that I just received here. You mentioned data protection and DR are popular, and he agrees. But I didn't see that prominently in your survey results, like in the investment area. How did you measure this?
Larry, do you want to take that?
Sorry, can you repeat the DA and?
Yeah, the data protection and disaster recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And how did we measure the investment area for those properties?
So those topics we're actually currently we're still studying. So in the last survey we did, it was not included. But moving forward, we understand data protection is very important. So currently we're actually working, talking to different partners and try to figure out, details on how to on the data protection and those kind of solutions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think expanding on that one, the initial focus in the Kasoda Foundation has been because the container-based deployments are gaining popularity. Our focus has always been how do you actually protect, you know, uh, the container-based infrastructure. How do you do the backups? How do you do the disaster recovery? Can you actually do the backups in the multi-cloud type of infrastructure? So we kind of targeted that area. And then if you look at the survey, there is a theme that it's a top of the concern. But we do need to get into the details of exactly what are the next level of detail for us to focus on. Even though we took the jumpstart in the community, we see some meta themes coming from the survey. Like Larry said, we probably need to get into more details on
Great.
the actual technologies and what is popular. How do we target that?
Yeah. Also, thanks, Reddy. So I'd like to add that we start to do the survey since 2021, and we plan to continue to do that, right? So what we learned is today multi-cloud and container is a trend. So we start on like a big pictures survey, and then as we learn more and more from the industry, from the surveys, that we know like which direction we should focus. That's when we, next one potentially we can focus on more details on, as we know that data protection is really important, and the next step is we'll focus on more detail on that. So we definitely let us know. We like to hear from you, so they'll help us to continue to evolve our survey to be more beneficial.
Great. And that's the value of this interactive webinar session that we have today. So this is great feedback and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Another question is, with large data growth and trends to utilize multiple vendors, what is being looked at from the network standpoint on connectivity to move large amounts of data from localized sites into the cloud over the internet?
Yeah, excellent question. I think so. I think there is an element of transferring big data sets, and they tend to be in several gigabytes. How do you transfer them? Really depends on type of data. In general, when it comes to optimizing the network, bandwidth, the key element is, can we actually compress? What kind of compression algorithms can we use to compress the best possible compression ratio, extremely deep compression? But then again, if you have encryption and then compression, on top of that, your compression may not be that good, right? So there is an element of reducing the data set size before it actually moves into the public cloud. That's one area of focus. The second area of focus essentially depends on really the target cloud provider, infrastructure. So, for example, Amazon has the direct connect as an option. So big IT shops may have direct fiber, connection to the Amazon cloud infrastructure as an example. So, you will have to tap into that side of the infrastructure so that you essentially have good enough amount of bandwidth to transfer large data sets. Again, it depends on the IT organizations, how big a data set they have, and how much of data has to go back and forth, and what is the right infrastructure for them to address, the growing, data explosion, challenge. Larry, any other comments?
No, yeah, pretty good answer.
Yeah, awesome. And so we have another question. Is cloud trending as an archive solution for long-term storage to free up space on localized storage? Did you gather any statistics on archival solutions?
So I don't know if you have the statistics on which archival solutions are actually popular in the multi-cloud, which public cloud provider is really dominant in that space. I don't think we have that data, but in general, when you look at the focus in the open source community is less about pivoting to certain implementation. It's more about providing a way to back up for long-term retention for the cloud, service provider of your choice, as opposed to we dictating that, right? As an open source community, we don't have that choice. We want to, leave that choice to the end customer. I don't know if we have enough data to say which one is actually dominant service out there for long-term retention. Maybe Larry, if you have any info, maybe you can shed some light too.
Yeah, like Reddy said, I don't think we have done specific question surveys for archiving solutions. But we know that some of end users, when they manage a lot of data, example of Toyota, which is also a member, on daily basis, they have a lot of data being generated globally. And these data, has to be stored in somewhere and kept for like 15 years by, to follow the, make sure they comply with the government regulations. So as you can imagine, it's not possible to store those data in, premier, storage. It's going to be so expensive and not efficient. So they just desperately need a kind of life cycle management kind of solution that can store these data, to different type of storage, eventually to archiving storage as well. And so I agree. Like archiving solution is also important. It's just that storage involves so many technologies. For our survey, we had to kind of focus on somewhere. But moving forward, archiving solution also will be something we'll look at it down the road as well. One way to get involved is that once you participate in SODA Foundation, we have different projects. And then you can also, start your own project once you're part of the SODA Foundation. You could potentially, I can see we can have a work group, can have some start project within the SODA Foundation.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
maybe just one additional clarity. I didn't want to kind of convey that the survey, the output is the only way that actually drives the SODA Foundation investments. It is essentially a multi-pronged approach. One is the survey as input into, okay, are we doing the right thing? Like Larry said, we have end user working groups as well. Then we have eco projects. So we essentially use, and then POCs with targeted end customers like Toyota. So we use a combination of all these things to say, okay, here are the set of areas that we believe there are consistent themes that we need to really, invest time and energy. Just wanted to point that out, so that it doesn't look like we are using surveys as the pure, as the only input into the investment areas, right?
That's right.
Excellent. Great. And thank you to the audience. Please keep the questions coming. That's awesome. And so what are some of the top production cloud storage workloads and use cases? How does this impact technology roadmaps?
Yeah, I think, I will probably separate that into two pieces. One is the actual core backend, the infrastructure from a storage perspective. As many of you know, software-defined storage has been very popular, with object, file, block protocols, and primarily to address, rent your infrastructure, whether it is on-prem, type of model or public cloud model, so that you essentially be able to, rent the compute infrastructure to deploy the workloads. That has been really the foundation. Now, what kind of workloads actually fit that bill? Initially, it used to be the virtual machines. Now, containers are actually gaining the popularity. So, if you look at the VMs and containers, web-based infrastructure has been very dominant, historically and traditionally, when the workloads started moving into the cloud, infrastructure. Now, what we see is more and more, databases, AI type of workloads are also moving into cloud infrastructure. That seems to be the major focus area based on the survey findings. More and more, using the cloud infrastructure containerized way to actually deploy them and be able to take the advantage of the DevOps type of infrastructure to really execute those workloads. So AI-based workloads and database workloads seems to be the key emerging focus area.
Excellent. And then based on the survey, how do end users strategize on the selection between storage vendor offerings, and what are the key attributes they're caring about?
So in terms of multiple heterogeneous multiple storage, we actually found that a lot of company are doing this, right? So they oh, sorry. What was this is about heterogeneous storage, right?
Correct. Yeah. The choice among various storage vendor offerings and the key attributes.
Sorry. Yes, we've seen actually, according to survey report, so 75% of end users already using multiple storage vendors, right? And this is, it's definitely a really a strong trend to use multiple storage vendors, especially among the large end users. So when they make a selection, and try to choose a storage vendor, so there are many things they look at it. So our survey, have questions relate to this. We learned that the things they number one in terms of things they look at factor they look at to select the vendor is the cost performance, reliability, and quality. So we found like 50, 60, 50, 55 or 56%, I don't remember,
Right.
of end users, organizations, like they pick this as a number one choice. And the second one's also the other things they look at is, as Reddy mentioned earlier, is data security compliance is very, very important. Whether this storage vendors can provide solution, good data security solutions, features such as like data encryption or access management, right? Things like that, or GDPR, sorry, like data store regionally, how data can be stored regionally, and
Right.
how whether data can have data redundancies, features, things like that. The other things are also the end user always like they need storage not just for the current technology, but also for future technology, right? And also, they want to pick a storage system that's really can support new technology. So that's another thing. So other things we heard from end users are like things they look at our reputation of the vendor, of course, brand name, how's the support and the consulting, and size of the ecosystem. So how many applications can support this ecosystem support, things like that. So that's
Excellent.
a summary of
Yeah, just expanding on what Larry mentioned, right? There is no one vendor solution that actually meets the need. So there are tremendous number of open source software stacks out there for monitoring. AI algorithms are predominantly open, right? Telemetry, data collection part, compression algorithms, encryption algorithms. There are significant number of open source stacks, so there is a trend of using open source in general has been one of those things. And then there are multiple open source projects as well, right? So it's not like one open source. There are umpteen number of open source projects out there for infrastructure monitoring, data management, data storage, databases, and all that stuff. So needless to say, all these IT end user organizations are looking at best of breed solutions with a mix of open source as well as commercial, software, products, to meet, wide variety of criteria. It could be the performance, it could be the control, it could be the security, it could be the governance, right? All those vectors actually drive what is the best of breed software solutions they need to, pick for their, needs.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
Sorry. On one point, so thanks, Reddy. So one thing I think, like Reddy was saying, that there's no perfect solutions from a single vendor. So but clearly the end user wants multiple choices. They want to have multiple storage system being able to deploy in the data center, and so they can use for different kind of workloads, different needs. So what
Right.
SODA project is doing is we're able to kind of allow, we have a framework that allowed end users to be able to utilize all these storage altogether as a unified storage pool.
Wow.
And also we extend this to software layer as well. Make it more easier, simple for end users to utilize all storage. It doesn't matter where it come from.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you both. That was excellent. And what are your findings with respect to container data management, and what is important to DevOps teams at this point?
So the container data management, obviously there is an element of, most of the IT shops look at containers, as the ground up, thinking. The all the way from managing the images, securing the images is very, very important, right? And then, deployment aspect of those images, let's say through Kubernetes type of orchestration framework. and then having the security, the guardrails on top of that to be able to monitor the containers. So the monitoring solution plays a very critical role, right? And then the management aspect of the container lifecycle, all the way from deployment to the consuming as well as retiring, right? That also plays a very critical role, right? So container data management essentially includes everything, with the underlying storage backend. So where is your data stored for containers? Where are the images stored? Um, so dominant configuration seems to be file based, a way to store the data and expose through the containers has been very dominant so far, because that blends very well. And there is also block storage and there is also object storage. So the storage aspect as well as the deployability aspect, monitoring aspect, all of them play critical role in the DevOps. And depending on what container orchestration you choose, your DevOps, the infrastructure will get influenced by that, because you have to tailor, you have to customize DevOps based on the container orchestration, backend that you have. Larry,
Awesome.
anything you want to comment on?
No.
Okay. Excellent. So, at a little bit bigger view, how do end users address data management across multiple CSPs and various hybrid cloud instances? What are the challenges there?
Yeah, I think I can answer this. So definitely the trend is to continue to use public cloud, multi-cloud. So actually we found that in the survey that 91% of organization deploy workloads in public cloud, right? And the advantage, of course, is using multi-cloud environment is flexibility, right? So you can free to use based on your needs. But managing the multi-cloud environment is also has some challenges, right? And in the survey we also have questions related to that. And the answer from end users that the top challenges is actually data security. So when the data is, whether it's at rest or in motion, we found that around 52% of end user organization identified data security protection as kind of leading multi-cloud challenge, and they often struggle to implement kind of best security practice to be able to utilize all these softwares and have the consistent policy action throughout using this no matter where this cloud data is, which data was which cloud they were store the data. So this is the top challenge, and then there's after that for data security challenge. The other challenge we heard from end users are survey takers. There's kind of secondary challenge. There are like actually three challenges. They kind of equal. One is the data governance and compliance. The other one's the second one's managing multiple services across different clouds, and the third one's cost management.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Ready? Anything to add?
Very well summarized.
Okay, excellent. So we have one last question, and then I'd like to provide some time for, I think, Larry, you have some closing comments. So,
okay.
So last question is, where does observability play a role when managing multiple data storage environments and frameworks?
Yeah, so I mean, just to click down on what exactly observability means is, having insights into how the data is actually being consumed, where it is consumed, and be able to react when there is any type of vulnerability, any type of violation on top of that. Unfortunately, when you look at observability, there are fragmented solutions. So if you have the data sitting in public cloud, you will have to follow the public cloud implementations on how they are actually monitoring. how the data is being actually consumed, and all those elements you have to adapt to the public cloud infrastructure, right? So that's one of the reasons why we are essentially looking at what is the best way to bring in the observability through unified control plane through the SODA Foundation work that I was alluding to in my talk. So we have to assume that observability implementations will be different among multiple cloud providers, and we'll have to bring them together. The second, focus area is really how, because of the data explosion being distributed among multiple infrastructure providers, how do we bring in AI as a way to actually drive the observability is really the second focus area we want to get to.
Mm-hmm. Great. Excellent. Larry, did you have a few concluding remarks? I think we go to that next slide, I believe. There we go.
Okay, great. So again, I really appreciate today's opportunity today to be able to SNIA, Michael and SNIA for inviting us to talk about the data storage trend survey we have done recently. One thing I want to mention is that today it was just hopefully this what we talk about generate some interest. So we only talk a little bit about the survey report, and hopefully more people can be interested, and just use the QR code on the slide to download the report, and you can get more detailed data information about this survey. And this is the first time for us SODA Foundation to participate SNIA's webinar. I hope not the last time. This opportunity, hopefully you generate some interest on SODA Foundation and what we do. And if you'd like to learn more, you're welcome to click on the link on the screen, or follow us on Twitter, and also join us on SODA Slack. Whether you're a company or a developer, we'll welcome you to join us and work with us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much to both of you for your expertise and insights. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I just really appreciate all your time and effort. It's been very enjoyable, and definitely we'll do some more joint webinars with you, so that'll be great. And thank you to everyone in our audience. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to rate this webinar, as this is very important to get your feedback, and this helps us to create better educational material. Also, please remember, you can always download this presentation and many other items at our educational library, as well as follow us on Twitter. Thanks again to all one more time. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.